I forget this guy's name. Something Kendall. From New Zealand, I believe he's Maori. If he's from another group of people that are not Maori, I stand corrected. I'm not really sure. I just understand that he's not of the European extraction of New Zealand citizens. He's from one of the original extractions. And you know, I ain't got nothing against them. They're cool with me. I don't know of any anti-black hatred they have. But then again, maybe somebody who's lived with more of them in the United States on the West Coast may be able to tell me something different. I'll say this. Kendall, I'm gonna be real with you, bro. Because you can be mistaken for a light-skinned black man, and I am a black man who has a similar phenotype to yours, not exactly. I'm actually paler than you based on the photograph I saw of you, Kendall. I gotta tell you, bro, there was no way you were gonna be able to win this one. If I had known you and I saw that you were asked this question you were about to answer, I could have pulled you off to the side and I can say, listen, you're not gonna get out of this one except with one answer, even if it's not true. Just say that you prefer the women of your tribe and that they seem interested in you too, so it works out. And that black women look great, but you don't know enough about them culturally to even make them happy. And even then, you probably would have caught hell for that. You could say, I'll know, you know, when I know more black women as friends, then I'll know how to feel about them. I don't know many of them. You could have said that maybe and gotten off the hook. That would have been the highest chance of you getting off the hook, not getting roasted. And you may not care about them roasting you and going in on you. If you don't care, you don't care. But see, I could have told you about this, Kendall. See, as a black man with your phenotype, I just found out less than a week ago that there were black women that prefer light-skinned men and are willing to admit it. But I can also tell you this. These spaces where black women can go if they prefer light-skinned men are usually closed off. I know they exist now only because I saw the screenshots, but the site was redacted, and I don't blame the lady who pointed that out for not telling us what the site or the URL was because she didn't want them to catch flack. But the general rule outside of these spaces, which have to be kept a secret for a reason, is that light-skinned men are not preferred even when they're preferred. What I mean, Kendall, is that if a black woman likes your type for the most part, after 1990, it was not, hell, even after halfway through 1989, they could catch a lot of hell just for admitting something like that. Now, they would catch hell if they admitted that they liked a light-skinned man, unless, of course, he beat up enough people. But to admit that they preferred light-skinned men would have caught them all kinds of hell. Even if they had nothing against darker-skinned men. The only way that a woman could get away with being with a light-skinned man in our community is if she said, well, he's the one that approached me. They're the ones that dig me. That's the truth of the matter. And frankly, that's exactly what Rashida Strober said, which would be a just reason for her being with a light-skinned man, despite her platform, because he approached her and she does not approach men. Kendall, you stepped in it, bro, and you didn't know you were going to. That's because you're dealing with a traumatized community, wounded. Their pride and their pride has been wounded at every turn. Our pride has been wounded at every turn. This did happen to us because of white folks. And this is going to lead, this is the segue into the only thing for which I have something to ask you about. If you don't prefer black women, you don't prefer them. You may not even meet many of them in New Zealand, unless they're from somewhere far away and English is a very distant second language, and of course they don't speak Maori, if that's your language. So I understand that there is a lot of difference that can make it hard for you to even spend a lot of time with them, to get to know them. I get that. At least back home in New Zealand. Now, the thing is, you know what white folks did to your people, and you know what they did to everybody else. Why do you prefer their women, and their women don't even think that their men are anything wrong? I mean, granted, Western women are not happy with Western men. This does extend to Western white communities as well. But the one thing for which they don't think that their men have done anything wrong is their men destroying, not even just ruling, but destroying other groups of peoples in their way of life. And yet you prefer white women. Sisters have a right to get on you about that. Well, I shouldn't say get on you, but they have a right to dismiss you for that. They don't have a right to go in on you per se, because sisters should know. Even though they tend to forget, they should know you can't force anyone to like you. Sisters, sir, understand this when it comes to them. No one can force them to like anybody. Therefore, they can't be forced to like you, but they don't understand that you can't be forced to like them. And it does not matter the shade of the woman. They do not get it. What they want, sir, is for you to want them, but to not be able to get them. That's what they're looking for. And that's what many women around the world tend to want on some level, because one thing is that does not ever lower a woman's self-esteem or ego. Men wanting her that can't have her never brings her ego down, no matter what culture she's from. She could be from a modest culture. If men don't bother her, that's good. But if they want her and they can't have her, that never hurts her ego. It almost always raises their self-esteem or relieves them of some sort of anxiety, because this is important to them. But it is exaggerated in the Western black woman, sir. Had you known this, you could have better planned this. You could have even said, let's be honest. There's no politically correct answer to give to this question, so I'm going to tell the truth. And then you could have said, I prefer, and it would have still been better if you would lie and said, I prefer the women of my own background. I know them, they know me, and they seem to be interested. I don't really know enough about black women. That may have been the best answer. I can tell you though, blood, on the real. You see, this was a trap. And there's no right thing to do now at this point. It clamped down on your foot. You didn't see it. You couldn't have seen it. You didn't even know it was a trap. You didn't know it was there. Anything you do is just going to make it worse. You sit still, it's going to close down on you. Get to the bone, cut your leg off. You try to open the trap, it's going to close down on you. Get to the bone and cut your leg off. God, if you melt the trap, it's going to melt your leg off. It's just not going to go away through no fault of yours. I take issue with the fact that you prefer specifically the woman that is the most dangerous. White folks need to be genetically isolated, to be honest, because this is one of the only things. Actually, I don't even care about them feeling safe per se, but it's just better for other folks. But then again, after 3 or 4 generations, maybe that wouldn't matter either. And that's why I'm not really dwelling on it, although I'm telling you I do disagree with that for more practical reasons than just ego. But the main thing is, black women want you to want them. And if you had said you preferred black women, they're great, and you said anything about their bodies, you would have been accused of fetishizing and sexually objectifying them. And if you had said something about them being the mothers of the planet, then they would have lost respect for you while pretending to respect you, and then try to use you to get certain things out of you. Showing approval and preference for them, that also would have led to another problem, sir. You know what that problem is? On the real? They would have, at that point, and it is sad, what they would have done is they would have then clowned you and told you, well, you may prefer us, but boo-boo, this ain't 1980s no more. You ain't our type. I mean, you cute, but we like them fine. Tall and chocolate, bald-headed. What they would have really meant was they like the kind that white folks are scared of. And it's up to them. It's okay for them to have that preference. I'm not against that. You see, Ken Doll, as a light-skinned black man with a phenotype similar to yours, I know that you have black blood, whether you know it or not, but that's not the point of this. The point I'm making is that because you are neither white nor black, you're not seen as having a right to not prefer black women, but they have the right to not prefer you. Assalamu alaikum. And so that's what's happening here. That's what you're dealing with. They have a right to not prefer you because you ain't chocolate, bald-headed, 6 foot tall, and muscle-bound, even though you do seem to be muscle-bound, and I don't really know your height. Fact is, you ain't bald-headed and chocolate. And They don't see you as having a right to not prefer them first and foremost over even your own women who may actually like you more than black women do. And so what I'm getting at is that even with your muscles, and even if you are tall, you're not necessarily the man that they want to fuck, or you're not the man they would admit they want. You're not the man with whom they want to fornicate. Or if you are, they would not admit to something like that. You are the man from whom they're willing to take a validation to boost their ego. And getting that validation and boosting their ego comes from two things at the same time. One, being selected and preferred by men. Two, not preferring those men, but rather turning them down. And that's really the opportunity they lost that you didn't give them, about which they're upset. And it will help you to know this. Now, at this point, I'm going to go on and address the fact that Sergeant Willie Pete and Sergeant Willie Pete and a non-black man have realized how much they agree on this. I don't expect Sergeant Willie Pete to agree with me about everything. He believes that we should be recategorized by phenotype, and that my phenotype is only a sign of an invasion of Africa. And maybe he even thinks that I represent a threat to black people. I don't even take that personally anymore, to be honest. I do have a rebuttal for that, but that's a different topic and a different recording. But the thing is that he and I can discuss things civilly, despite the fact that we have different platforms. A non-black man and I probably could. We get along civilly when we don't agree. We haven't had it out yet, although I expect him to prioritize his loyalty to light skin motivation over civility to me, because they've worked together for longer. It's not even personal. Light skin motivation and I aren't insulting each other and calling each other foul names per se, but she and I can't see eye to eye even when she agrees with me or when I agree with her. Not because of any reason outside of one, and that is that when we do agree, she doesn't realize it. She's not the only one. You see, there are some men and women alike on her channel that don't realize when it is that we agree. They see half of what I wrote, but they also see my name, Black Mind, formerly Black Heart. And they realize it because I'm not disavowing the black community as a whole, because you see, it wasn't the black community as a whole that ever came against me because of my complexion and phenotype. Then they get upset about that. That's really what it is. So I'm gonna clear this up for y'all right quick. That day may actually come. It's possible that one day I'll disavow them. It's not very likely, and here's why. You see, the truth be told, it wasn't the majority of them that ever came against me. Most were actually against it. You are bringing receipts as a channel to prove the case that you are making. We don't have light skin privilege in the black community. It certainly does not save us from violence from within the community, even if we're attacked for reasons other than the phenotype and shade. And yes, people do think they can easily whoop our behinds. Even those who don't hate us think that it's just going to be an easy fight. That's been going on ever since even my mother was a kid. Even white folks think that. I've had some of them think that I would be easier to beat than somebody darker than me, but in reality, they didn't necessarily assume that I would be easy for them to beat, just easier than someone darker than me, that's all. I get it, and you bring in receipts for that. And that's cool. I'm still going to look at the older videos over time for that. But the fact remains that I need to ask a question so that I can get my facts together, so that I can either confirm or disprove an observation that I have made. And I need to ask this of a non-black man, not you light skin motivation. I need to ask a non-black man this question. I don't want to bother you. You said leave your channel alone. Fair enough. I watched the videos that you put up a long time ago. I'll go further back, get the receipts for what I'm about to say. Thank you. But I'm not here to bother you. Although I do want to say that actually we agreed more often than you. And same with Paul Bryant. We actually agreed more often than he realized. So I still don't even know why he jumped down my throat, unless, of course, he didn't fully read what I wrote and just went off on a rant. And that is some nigger shit, regardless of complexion, nationality, or anything else. Human beings in general that have been oppressed develop these triggers, and this is a sign of one of them. My own parents had that. 2 words into a sentence, they cutting us off, correcting things we didn't say, didn't mean, didn't want to hear it, and we in trouble for some stuff we didn't do, didn't say, didn't mean, never asserted, had nothing to do with. And they almost lost my brother and me. They fixed this. And now they're better parents for it, and better grandparents. Kind of. I had to tell him I'm not passing on that nigga shit to my own kids. They're going to have a voice. They just don't have the final decision. That's on me because I pay the cost to be the boss. But you see, it's the same thing with my wife. If I pay the cost to be the boss, she has a voice, just not the final decision. And she doesn't really look for that. But if she wants the final decision, she pays the cost, and then she is the boss. It's just a question of being that simple and that fair. That's all. Now, for you, I want you to keep this in mind. You can learn a lot more. We're done. I get it. You done with me, but we can learn a hell of a lot more as a people if we will at least hear each other out before we decide we disagree or agree. And then even then you will realize that when you disagree, it's not always hostile. Brady Hartsfield does not agree with me, but she knows how to disagree. Barani Moon may not agree, but she understands that I'm not the enemy. Telling Stewart may not agree with me, but she understands. And honestly, I learned things from her. A very limited interaction we've had, and I've learned some things from her, like what I've learned from you. And I can admit this to her because she's not jumping down my throat if we disagree. She's saying, are you serious or is this real? That's all. Now, my question for you, a non-black man, and this is no hostility. I'm really just asking because you know something I don't. I think I'm older than you, so I may have more life experiences just because I've had more time. That's how it works. Nothing personal. But when it comes to new changes, a lot of times you younger folks know something I don't know. And I've learned a lot from y'all. My question is this. I've noticed that in the black community, it's not the majority that ever comes against any particular complexion or shade, even light-skinned folk like me with straight hair. It's not really the majority that do. They're jokes when they know you, but I'm talking outright hostility. I don't see that from a majority. But you tell me if I'm wrong. Has this changed any? Is it different now? Are you observing that the majority of the black community is outright sick of light-skinned black men and wants to push us out? I mean, when I'm not in the room, is it pretty much a guarantee that they're talking trash about me after I leave? Or is it also your observation that it's not really the numerical majority of the community that mistreats us and devalues us and would rather we just crawled off and died under rocks somewhere? I'm just asking what your observation is because, you know, things do change from age group to age group. And it may be a change in trend you observe that I just didn't know about. It may be that I'm stupid and wrong for not disavowing the black community, but I got to get the information to make a good decision. And even if it is the case, I want the rest of you in the audience to understand this. If it is the case that the majority of black America wants light-skinned black men out of the way and gone and get the F out our faces, if that is the case, I'm still not going to support your enemies against you. Because you see, even if I'm the kind of guy you don't want amongst your ranks, get the hell out. Okay, fine. You don't want me amongst your ranks, fine. That doesn't mean that somebody else is right for the things that they've done to you, because they're not coming against you because of how you've treated me, good or bad. And most of the time it's been neutral and fair. They're coming against you because of your melanin account, and that's not okay. I wouldn't do stuff to harm white people because they're lighter skinned or because they're white. It always has to be based on what the society has done to everybody else. And I'll say this to you, light skin motivation, and I'm out. If the black community voted unanimously and said, we're going to kick out Black Mind, he's not black, he has none of the protections, then I would say, okay, that means I got no responsibilities either. But I still would not side with other people against black folks, because when the Chinese kicked them Africans out in Gwangju and evicted them into the streets, it was not because of how they treat lighter-skinned people or even what they do to the albinos in Africa. They did it because they're black. And they'll tell you this. They'll tell each other this. Thanks for listening. Again, Assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual male power, specifically because she don't like it. Black heart, black mind, black out.